Hello, first grade. It's me, Mr. B, here to guide you through today's power writing um, activity where we are going to be working on making sentences more powerful by combining ideas. You see those words there? That's the big idea. So in first grade, one of the things we've been doing is working on making our sentences more powerful, because our stories, when we're writing stories, a story is a bunch of sentences combined. So if we can make our sentences more powerful, our stories will be more powerful. Over the last few months, you've been working on adding details, revising your stories by adding fragments and details that start with some of these words. Remember, because, but, and so. You added details that started with those fragments. We added details that were appositives that told more about each some of the nouns in our sentences. We added details with fragments that start with before, after, unless, if, while, although, since, and even though. You guys have done a really nice job making your sentences more powerful with these type of detail words. So today we're going to take some of that, some of those skills and kind of put it all together with another strategy, which is combining ideas to make more meaty and complex sentences. So we've always said that a sentence tells a complete idea. Well, now we're going to learn about making sentences that tell more than one complete idea. 2 or 3 ideas can be in one sentence if we are careful about how we do it. So to show you an example, here are 3 perfectly fine sentences about Gaylord Nelson, who we just have been reading about. So it says, Gaylord Nelson was a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin. Gaylord Nelson started Earth Day 50 years ago in 1970. And then the third sentence, Gaylord Nelson used the peaceful problem-solving process. So you could make these perfectly fine sentences into even more interesting sentences by combining 2 or maybe even all 3. So in order to do that, you have to think, how do the different sentences, are they related to each other? Well, all 3 are about Gaylord Nelson. So you could say, you could combine these 2 sentences by keeping the same naming part. They both have Gaylord Nelson. So you could say Gaylord Nelson, comma, and then you could put in a positive, who started Earth Day 50 years ago in 1970, comma, was a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin. Okay? Or you could do it the other way around. You could say, Gaylord Nelson, comma, a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, comma, started Earth Day 50 years ago, comma, in 1970. So you can make a positives out of either of these sentences and add them to the other sentence to make a really complex sentence. Or, if you think about it, he used the peaceful problem-solving process to start Earth Day. So you could say, Gaylord Nelson, comma, a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, comma, used the peaceful problem-solving process so he could start Earth Day 50 years ago in 1970. So then I added a so, right? So it's okay to either combine two ideas or three. So let's start out with two. And here's our list of possibilities. So how about if we do in a positive and we could do because. So we know that our naming part is going to be Gaylord Nelson, comma, and then the positive is a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, so a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is a place, so it starts with a capital W, comma, use the peaceful problem-solving process, so he started Earth Day 50 years ago. Or you could say, started Earth Day 50 years ago because he used the peaceful problem-solving process. Or you could say, started Earth Day 50 years ago, you could say, while using the peaceful problem-solving process. Or you could say, after using the peaceful problem-solving process. So why don't we go with why don't we go with while? So we could say started Earth Day, and Earth Day is the name of a holiday, so it's going to have a capital E for Earth and D for day. Started Earth Day 50 years ago. While using, and if you need extra room, you can just use the space below the line, the peaceful problem solving process. All right, so I just made a really complex sentence out of three, using all three ideas. Gaylord Nelson, comma, a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, comma, started Earth Day 50 years ago while using the peaceful problem-solving process. What I would like you to do is to try to combine at least two of the fragments into ideas, or complete ideas into more complex ideas, using by adding fragments using these words, which I will put in the lesson plan, or you could use appositives. So for the next one, next example, I'm just going to model what it would look like to just use two of these ideas. So let's read. It says, the most effective way to care for the earth is reducing. We can take care of the earth by reusing. We can take care of the earth by recycling. So, well, you could, if you just want to do two, so look at your list. You do they does one of these cause something else to happen? Not really. They're not really related. They're not contradictory to each other. They don't happen before or after or unless. But although might work, or even though you could say, although the most effective way to care for the earth is reducing, comma, we can take care of the earth by reusing. Or we can take care of the earth by recycling. Even though the most effective way to care for the earth is reducing. All right, so why don't we try although? So although the most effective way to care for the earth is reducing, comma, we can take care of the earth by reusing. We can take care of the earth by reusing. Okay, so now I showed you how you can just make a complex sentence just using two of those ideas. But by the way, it just so happens it would be really easy to add this third idea by just putting and. You could say by reusing and recycling. So feel free when you're doing this activity to try to use all three ideas. That would be really impressive. But at a minimum, I'd like you to just do two and get the idea of making these more complex sentences. All right, so let's try a different one. So it says, Earth is the only known planet in the universe where plants and animals live. Earth is not too hot and not too cold. Earth is sometimes called the Goldilocks planet. All right, so how do these ideas relate to each other? Well, Earth is called the Goldilocks planet because it's not too hot and not too cold. So you could say that. Earth is sometimes called the Goldilocks planet because it's not too hot and not too cold. You could write that for an answer. You could write, you could make an appositive out of the first sentence. You could say Earth, comma, the only known planet in the universe where plants and animals live, comma, is not too hot or not too cold. You could say Earth, sometimes called the Goldilocks planet, is the only known planet in the universe where plants and animals live. There's lots of ways to combine them. It's really easy to make a positives out of one of these sentences and then use it in a combined, more powerful sentence. So you could also say Earth is not too hot and not too cold, so it is sometimes called the Goldilocks planet. Okay, so to save time, I'm not going to actually write that out. I just wanted to give you some of those ideas. So when you click on the link that's in the lesson plan today, there are 3 sentences that I'd like you to try to combine in some way, combine the ideas to make into one complex sentence. So let's look at them. So on your directions, I wrote all of the words that we can use to combine the ideas, right? So because, but, so, after, if, when, even though, although, since, while, and unless. And I'll also put some verbiage in there about appositives, because you can make these into appositives. So your job is going to be to read the sentences and then combine them into combine at least two of them into one big sentence. So, wait a minute, that's the wrong one. There we go. So, says, Earth Day is a day when we dedicate ourselves to caring for the environment, for our environment. Earth Day was started by Gaylord Nelson. Earth Day was started 50 years ago. So you could make one of these into an appositive and make it, so for example, you could say Earth Day, comma, started 50 years ago, comma, was started by Gaylord Nelson. Or you could say Earth Day, comma, a day when we dedicate ourselves to caring for our environment, comma, was started by Gaylord Nelson, or was started 50 years ago. So try down here to make one complete sentence starting with Earth Day in capital letters. Add an appositive, or you can add because, or but, or so, before, after, unless, if, while, although, since, or even though. Any of those words that we've practiced before. Then on the next page, which I hopefully you'll be able to print two-sided to save paper. Otherwise, on the second page, reducing use of resources is an important way to care for our environment. Reducing means using less of a resource. Turning off water and lights are examples of reducing. So try to combine two of those ideas. Could say, you could say reducing, comma, which means using less of a resource, comma, is an important way to care for our environment. Or you could say, reducing means using less of a resource, so turning off water and lights are examples of reducing. Whoops. You could say, reducing, which means using less of a resource, comma, is an important way to care for our environment. You could say reducing means using less of a resource and is an important way to care for our environment. So there's lots of ways to combine two of those ideas into one more powerful sentence. So try your best. We're not looking for perfection. We just want to make progress, making our sentences more complex. And then the last three ideas about reusing. Reusing is another important way to help our environment. Reusing means to use something more than once. Goodwill is a store that helps us reuse resources. So you could say reusing, comma, which means to use something more than once, comma, is another important way to help our environment. You could say Goodwill is a store that helps us reuse resources, or comma, or use something more than once. you could say Goodwill is a store that helps us reuse resources, and that is another important way to help our environment. So you can combine sentences just by adding and or between the ideas, like I just did there. Again, try your best. Doesn't have to be perfect. We want to make progress. So thank you for trying this. I look forward to seeing your powerful, complex Earth Day sentences. Cheers.